A few weeks ago, I put in a pick-a-brick order from the Lego website overseas. And as I told you last week, I received a bunch of Wolfpack torsos. And then I put in a second order because now they had them in stock domestically for more Wolfpack torsos and some gray legs, heads, weapons and helmets. And I'm really excited because they arrived this week. So I have all my pick-a-brick parts now. And all of that prompted my desire to order my first set from the Bricklinks designer program, and that's the Wolfpack Castle that's dedicated to the Wolfpack faction. I think it truly fits in with that traditional kind of Lego Wolfpack lore with them as, I guess, bandits. But, that set is a long way off. I don't think it crowdfunds until October. It doesn't ship till like March 26. And as many of you have pointed out, the Wolfpack doesn't have to stay rooted to that Lego lore that originally was designed for it. The Wolfpack, as some of you mentioned, also could very well be its own nation with its own rulers and armies and its own commerce. Now, I still want that Bricklink Wolfpack set, but as I wait, I've begun to imagine, as I do, what if the Wolfpack were its own nation? How would I stage that, and what would that look like? I'm Tom Bray since 1954, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So this week, I began to toy around with the idea of the Wolfpack Nation, and I jumped another step down that road from last week by actually taking two builds of the original 3-in-1 medieval castle. First of all, the castle itself, and then the tower build that I previously built, and simply stage them together. And imagine, what if that's the Wolfpack Castle? Now, I swapped out the shield on the front for the Wolfpack shield, and I simply, stood them next to one another. I played around with positioning, but I instantly really liked the feel of what I was seeing. Now, I plan on experimenting with actually, altering the build, adding some black brick, for example, or changing the height of one of the castle ramparts. But for this kind of exploratory time, just simply staging them side by side works really well. Now, what in my imagination is the government of the Wolfpack Nation? So I envisioned a nation ruled by a powerful young queen. I wanted there to be a female monarch. Now, she's assisted by her father, the old king, and I love the idea that he abdicated his power to give over to his kingdom to the next generation. I thought that might be cool. And last of all, in this kind of royal family, in my imagination, is her younger brother, but he's only 10 or 11. But someday, he's going to rule as her co-ruler right next to her. Now, how to create the minifigs? I have the gray pants and I have the Wolfpack torsos, but I wanted something different. So I used the torsos, but I altered the legs. I found that the Lion's Knights parts worked well for this, and specifically I'm talking about the white legs used for the royal figures in that set. Because the belt trim, which is red, fit in nicely with the red in the crest of the Wolfpack, gave it a unifying look. And I gave the old king and the prince white swords, and the queen a royal scepter that I made from jewels from her kingdom, and also some Ninjago parts. Now, more on those jewels in a few moments. Now, I imagine that these people are generally very peaceful people, the Wolfpack Nation, but can be fierce warriors if they're provoked. And so I wanted to explore that a little bit. Now, the royal family itself is going to be protected by the Praetorian Wolf Guard, which consists of the master of the guard. And here I used legs that I think came from a Ninjago figure. And then the main Praetorian Guard are the hooded and caped guardsmen. And these guardsmen are you'll recognize them. They're the few Wolfpack minifigs that I was able to find and collect from the previous collectible minifig series. As you know, that was one of the most sought-after figures in that set. The old king also has a personal body man, the king's man, who's constantly with him, and I imagine him as old as the king, so I gave him long gray hair. If you're going to get near the king, you got to get through him first. In addition to the Praetorians, the royal family It's guarded by the Wolfpack itself, which are those little figures from the minifig series, the little wolf figures. And they're trained and led by who I imagine is the master of the wolves and his lieutenants, whom I gave gray legs and black helmets and swords, as well as blank gray shields. And I just love the look of them, as well as the idea of this kind of wolf pack guard. The kingdom also has mounted soldiers, and they're riding black steeds with black lances and some fierce-looking helmets that I pulled out of my parts box. And they're carrying what I think is called flails, those spiky balls on chains. And by the way, it's for just this occasion that I'm really glad that I've accumulated some vintage Lego weapons and helmets and things, but also modern aftermarket ones. I did a whole video on that. There's also some, regular infantry men with gray trousers, but I gave them black helmets and black swords. I also created crossbow archers because I had bought a bunch of brown hoods, which is different from the black hoods that the Praetorian wears. So I gave them brown crossbows, and I think they look really cool in their brown hoods and brown crossbows, way up high guarding the castle ramparts. Speaking of guarding the castle, I wanted to create a special unit of soldiers whose sole responsibility was to do just that, guard the castle. And I wanted their livery to be slightly different. So they have a shiny silver helmet that they wear, and their lower half was created by just taking the pants section from the normal Lions Knights soldiers. I think the red in the pants and the blue boots for kind of accents, I think it ties everything together. I think eventually I might add some blue gloves, but for now I really like the way these characters look. Now, this castle guard has several older and experienced soldiers. Maybe they're officers, I don't know. But they wear a different silver helmet, and I also selected heads that had kind of gray, old man facial hair, like me, for these characters. What about commerce, and what about the business of the kingdom? Well, in my imagination, the Wolfpack Nation is a very, extremely wealthy nation, and they've become wealthy through mining. And so, to begin to show this, I've staged a scene where we see an infantry soldier about to load a crate of jewels from the mine into a wagon while being guarded by infantry. And they're at the foot of the mine. And by the way, that stone structure there is a small vintage Wolfpack set, as well as the wagon. I really love collecting those small little vintage Lego sets when I can find them. Now, I've only just begun thinking about and creating this new nation. And with several unopened 3-in-1 medieval castle sets from last season and, a ton of pick-a-brick parts now that are Wolfpack parts, I'm really looking forward to creating this new kingdom while I wait for that brick link set to crowdfund and deliver. But how about you? Have you considered turning the Wolfpack into their own nation? Are you going to order parts from that faction from Pick-a-Brick? Now, I'd love to hear your ideas. I always learn so much from you. So that's it for now. Until next time, thank you again for your continued support, and happy building.